What's up, everybody? It's ImmaLetYouFinish with Court and Amy on the Pantheon Podcast Network. It's show number 158. We have a special guest.
Which is my weight. I think that's how much I weigh now. I've been eating so much.
We have a
special guest, Jim Farber.
Will be on in the second half.
Here,
I'm making
hearts. Who's a critic, and according to David Gonzalez, I'll say what David Gonzalez said about him. But Jim Farber, great writer, and we love him. Okay, so hi, how are you? It's summer again. What happened?
Listen.
Well, I know.
Okay, well, first let's talk about what happened on Friday in New York, kids. I had everybody calling me from all of my sister. You have everything. You're all right. Because I guess what they were seeing on the news, and then when I turned on the news, I realized how bad it was downtown. Friday was insanity in New York. Like flooding everywhere. I have friends who...
Jersey and Long Island too, but it was more felt in New York. Yeah.
I mean, people's houses have flooded. Businesses have flooded. Our mayor was nowhere to be found and had an attitude when asked why you were nowhere to be found. Well, because
it wasn't a club.
I mean...
You have to call it Club Flood.
I mean, and then he would have been there in a full outfit.
In a full outfit.
Entourage.
And a Balenciaga wetsuit,
Right,
ready to snorkel through the crowd. Yeah.
The worst.
Yeah. All right. Talk to your friends who voted for him, Courtney. Talk to your people who voted for him.
Well, I think he's going to not buck the tradition of New York City mayors, black mayors being one term. I absolutely think if somebody...
Well, there's only been one other, to be fair.
And he got one term.
Right. Well, that's because of riots.
But David Dinkins actually, I think, got a raw deal. He
totally did.
He got a raw deal, But this guy deserves only one term. If anybody primaries him, they will win. Because I don't think he's won anybody over. You know what I mean? I will
tell you that all he has to do is go to black churches in Queens and outer Brooklyn and put everybody on a bus and drive them to the polls.
But they all won't like.
They like it still.
Some do, but a lot. I'm telling you, as a black person who's speaking to other black people, including ones who voted for him, they're not fucking with him anymore.
Well, good.
So he may have those old ladies in the church, and remember, he won on a record low turnout. So Catherine Garcia almost got him.
I know. But she's a girl.
But this time,
no girl mayors.
Except he's so horrible. This is when I think that he can usher in whoever primary. Yeah. Amy, I'm telling you, you should run. We could just have the slogan, Amy Linda for mayor. And your slogan would be like,
my house.
But your slogan just needs to be, she's not him.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. You don't even need to have a platform. My platform is, I'm not him.
And I actually am a vegetarian.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
and I actually am a vegetarian.
Right.
And I know where I live.
And when the city is about to be dying, you would actually be on TV telling people what to do instead of being at a fundraiser for yourself the night before and being like, my people had it. I'm like, people were on buses with buses filled up with water. There's water shooting through the tiles of the subway station.
No, it was a lot. Fort Greene Park looked like the mighty
mistake.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
And the fact that he was like, everybody had it. I'm like, you're the mayor.
Yeah, well, yeah. All right. In Law and Order news, am I the only one? All right. So they arrested a man in connection for allegedly. Now, are they alleging the LAPD that this is the man who shot Tupac, or this is the man who was a witness to?
Well, but evidently, hasn't he been doing interviews for years saying that he did it?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm very confused by.
I'm very confused. Okay, so first I thought it was like they suspected it was an inside job from the cops, right? Or is that another thing? With the LAPD. I can't keep them straight.
I feel like that's all tied together, and
there was like some weird, dirty cops and Ken somebody, and then they've always suspected, obviously, that it had something to do with Suge himself, allegedly, because Suge is just a saint, obviously. Right. But I mean, yay, they caught somebody. That's good.
Yeah.
It does seem like he's been like saying for 20 years, "Hey, guess what? I shot Tupac. I'll be at the Ralph's later."
Right.
If
you know what I mean? In the parking lot signing copies of my book if I did it.
Right. I'm just like, it was just sort of like, oh, it's like the illegal version of Christopher Columbus. The thing was there that he discovered, but hey, that's good. It's good. It's good.
It's like, never mind those people living there. We don't really know what that is.
No, but it's good. Obviously, you want crimes to be solved.
You want everything to be solved. And this one has gone unsolved for a very long time. I know we kid, but it's like, listen.
No,
I wish his mother was alive to, have seen this day, but ultimately he still has family, siblings, and
it's good. And he has friends, and obviously, when did Funkmaster Flex, by the way, drop the master part of his? Is that because master's not a cool word anymore?
No,
he's just Funk Flex now.
Yeah, but he's been Funk Flex,
Yeah, whatever.
But I still think he still has drops to say Funk Master Flex, Funk Flex. So I think it's still
his full name. All right. So I suppose we should have an air horn before we say his name, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So Funk Flex. Again, this is the downside of social media. Were you wondering when this man got arrested for allegedly killing Tupac? I wonder what Funk Flex, who has nothing to do with anything with this, has to say about. Were you wondering about that? Because I could not sleep that night.
Well, what his comment was more about was that Jada had all of these things to say.
Jada Pinkett Smith,
who was his friend, and they used to date. And I kind of get the point that he's making a little bit. Hear me out.
I am.
No married person wants to constantly hear their wife talking about an ex publicly. And so she talks about him a lot. And I guess in Will's book that just came out, his autobiography, he talked about how that relationship, painful, and that is something that's kind of like a trigger point for him, the Tupac and Jada thing. And the truth of the matter is, I just think with her, I don't know. I always look at her.
He was married before and had a whole child. I mean,
yes, absolutely. But you do not hear him on interviews.
No.
And my ex-wife was so great. You never hear him do that.
Jada is somebody who would go to the opening of an envelope and likes to be all about herself. You notice her hair has grown back, by the way.
It's a miracle. It is a Christmas
Please don't
miracle.
Anybody come at me. But everyone I know who is alopecia, the hair never grows back. Or very, very rarely.
It's a Christmas
America.
A full head, not a bald spot of hair.
Right. And not only that, if I had something wrong with my hair, as someone who has done every conceivable thing to their hair, color-wise, whatever, I wouldn't put bleach on it.
Again, it's a Christmas miracle.
That's just me.
Move over, baby Jesus, because here it comes.
Black Jesus heard her cries.
Second Christmas miracle.
It's amazing.
Look at that.
Amazing. No,
you're cured.
She's cured.
Just in time for your book tour.
A preacher, really? A preacher put a hand on her head, and the next thing you know, he pulled the alopecia. He rebuked that alopecia.
And I guess the thing is, I think it was dumb with Flex. I always think men speaking about women is really dumb.
Well, he called her the worst kind of way. I mean, that's where he doesn't have to go. He could say she's got us up, but that was a nasty comment. I mean, that's a nasty comment. But that's a nasty comment to put it that kind of thing, because, whatever. So she spoke about that, and yay, and she has a book coming out, and can't wait.
And I would like her to have a book for all of the alopecia sufferers around the world to teach them how to make it come back full, blonde, and amazing in time for a book
looks
tour.
Great. Yeah, it looks amazing. All right. Here's something I never thought I would ever say in my life, and we can talk to Jim about this too, because
P. Isadora is your favorite.
No, never.
Neil Farmer came to your house.
No, the house would be cleaner if it was. I never thought I would say, oh my God, the new Stones single is fantastic.
Right. Well, I was the one who said on this show a couple of weeks ago, no one needs a new Rolling Stones.
Well, obviously we did.
Well, no, the song is good. Listen.
It's really good. It's called Sweet Sounds of Heaven.
I first had an eyebrow up when it was like Stevie Wonder and Lady Gaga and the Rolling Stones. I was like,
that's it.
There's a lot of people that shouldn't go together.
Yeah, but here's what it's a great song. It's Mick Jagger at his jaggeriest.
He sounds great.
Here's the single sounds great. Who produced this? Andrew Watt? Andrew Watt, who I can't think of who he is, but he's a younger. All right, here's my only, and I understand why they have those two names on. It's a very gospel. It's really, really good. Okay. The only instrument I have ever been able to tell that it's Stevie Wonder on a feature is the harmonica. He's playing keyboard. You couldn't prove it by me. I have no idea. Okay.
He does have a style, though. I can usually tell.
Yeah, but I can't really hear it in this. That's what I'm saying. And it's very kind of Stones, Sticky Fingers, a lot of horns. It's great. I understand why you put Gaga's name on something, but seeing as how the Stones have on retainer one of the greatest singers ever, Lisa Fischer, do we really need Gaga way up in the mix doing her imitation of a gospel singer? That's what I'm saying. I know why, but I'm just saying it just seems like you don't even really know it's Gaga unless you say, when you see it. And she's kind of a little high in the mix, like it's becoming a duet. But it's a great, great song, and it bodes well for an album, because I haven't listened to a full Stones album since, God, Emotional
But they haven't
Rescue.
put out an album of original. They've had like these blues albums and remaking their songs. But this is their first album of original material in like 18 years.
Yeah, no, and everyone, they will tour, they will sell out, and they will put on a capital S show. Because that's what they do. Because these
because here's the thing: when you're older musicians. Like that, you put out a record and they just had a successful tour. You go back out on the road, like you don't have to wait because they have a built-in fan base.
And Mick has a lot of kids, and I'm sure he wants to get away from all of them. He's got too many kids. But no, it's gonna. I have only seen the Stones once, and it was, oh my God, when was it? 78, 79. Long time ago.
I can't remember.
It was a long time ago.
I feel like I saw them, and I feel like I saw them at the Beacon Theater.
Oh, you saw that show. That's the one that Scorsese filmed.
But it also feels like maybe I did. I've seen so many shows now that I don't remember who I've seen and who I haven't seen.
Because I won the tickets in a radio contest. No, I did. I won. It was the only time I've ever won anything.
People actually win those shits?
I did. I won tickets in a radio contest. I know.
In New York?
No, in Oakland, California.
Oh, okay.
I saw him in Oakland.
Nice.
With Santana opening up for him.
Oh.
All right, NSYNC put out. Who cares about NSYNC?
Nobody. Clearly, no one cares.
This is obviously a money grab for Justin. Well, who cares about Justin Timberlake?
It's almost like this all came too late.
It's too late.
When I look at, they all look like someone's cousin's uncle who they're standing up there like, why are we here? Yeah. Even when they did the hot ones, I was like, this is dumb.
No, and Justin Timberlake, as far as I'm concerned, has burnt every conceivable bridge he can burn.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
He's burnt bridges with black people who were a big part of his fan base. He has burnt bridges with women. He has just burnt bridges. As soon as you start doing your I'm Wearing Flannel in the Woods album, that's a sign that you're.
And then the whole album sounded completely opposite of that. It was like, what's happening?
Just, I think we will go back. I mean, his solo stuff was good, but I think history will show how problematic he actually was. I mean, it's showing it a little bit, but
listen, a lot of people can be problematic, right? We're all human. I just think that he's a person who's been, like a lot of celebrities, he's been famous since he's a teenager. And sometimes that can make people a little douchey. You know what I mean?
Well, I think he's a lot.
I think it make a little douchey. But, this song is just dumb. No one cares.
Nobody cares.
This is the reunion they tried to make a big deal that we're all like,
and everybody's like, why is my dad up there?
It's like, I like pimento cheese on a cracker. I like it spread on a cracker.
Do you? Yeah,
I do. I like a little bit on a cracker. I think.
All right, Beyonce. I didn't know she was on tour.
I had no idea. And guess what? The tour ended, and
it must have been one of those stealth, like Prince at 3:00 in the morning tours.
And the great part is, now that it's over, we don't have to hear about it anymore. Oh no, there's a movie. So now it's going to just go through the end of the
year. Is Blue Ivy being homeschooled? I'm very concerned about this.
Well, I do know
she must be traveling with a tutor.
I would think that.
She's traveling with a tutor.
Absolutely. I would absolutely.
I'm just concerned about that.
Tutor, because I do say she does have a school in Los Angeles, and I believe when they're back home, she's in.
As long as she's not going to Will Smith school.
Remember, Tom Ford let us know that when he was like, yeah, sometimes I see Beyonce at, pickup. Our kids go to the same school in LA.
Oh, that's cute.
Mm-hmm.
That's cute.
Mm-hmm. It's called Rich People School. Like, it's a rich people school.
As long as she's not going to the Will Smith school, she's fine.
No, okay.
That's a Scientology school, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm not saying this to be mean, but when people who are close to 80, who are musicians, who have a very strenuous job, cancel a tour, I'm like, that's like me saying I can't go to the club tonight because I'm in bed. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, Aerosmith has postponed this tour.
Yes, Steven Tyler, they started, the tour opened, he sounded great, but he's having some real vocal issues, and they thought that it could just be a little bit of miss a couple of shows, vocal rest, but now they're saying it's a little more serious, and they postpone the entire tour until next year. Listen, but the way that Steven Tyler has sang when that type of voice for all of these years, it's like absolutely that you're going to... But I feel like he takes care of his voice because he could still sing. Yeah. But I think that when you sing like that, you're going to eventually, it's like the Whitneys and all of these, the women that we notice have nodules on their vocal cords because all of that, it's hard. You know what I mean? It's really, really hard.
And I will say this, I've heard,
especially people who sing live,
I've heard allegedly that drugs can do damage to your throat. This is just what I've heard. I read that once in a magazine, in the AARP magazine. I read that if you have a history, allegedly, of who's at your door.
I think this might be the horrible moment when it's my super who needs to come up. Hold on.
Hello, Pantheon Podcast listeners. Christian Swain here to tell you more about my experience with Raycon earbuds. Our family now has 3 pairs of Raycon earbuds around the house, and my wife just grabbed a pair of the Headphone Pros to replace some headphones from a company that was double the price. And yes, she loves them. Now, if you haven't pulled the trigger on a pair of Raycons, or even if you have but you're in the market for another pair because they're just that good, well, now is the time to check them out, because they just launched their upgraded model of the best-selling everyday earbuds. With Raycon's upgraded everyday earbuds, now you also get active noise cancellation, ergonomic design, and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. New quick charge function, 3 customizable sound styles, plus awareness mode. Available in a variety of vibrant new colors to complement any and all skin tones. I even have a pair of earbuds in a cool green color. I have tried just about every earbud known to humankind, and these Raycons are fantastic. Seriously, if you've been wanting to check out Raycons, there truly is no better time. You're going to ask yourself why you didn't check them out sooner, and Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Go to buyraycon.com/Pantheon today to get 20% off your Raycon order, plus free shipping. That's right, you'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/Pantheon. buyraycon.com/Pantheon.
Okay, the madness of New York is super because there's a building lady who's coming in who had to do a survey of my apartment in the middle of the show. And when he told me, like, he was like, we'll be there sometime between 9 and 12. They never come. They never come in the early morning hours. So, of course, today is the day in the middle of us talking, the bell rings, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway. Your boy Tyrese is suing the widow of Teddy Pendergrass because he met Teddy when he was young, and Teddy told him in his ear that if it's ever a biopic on me, only you can play me. And he says that happened, and he has taken that to heart. And I guess he had the rights.
Does he have anything on paper?
Well, they did, but then the rights ran out. And I guess she wouldn't give him the rights again.
And I would assume, with my vast legal mind, that the person who was actually married to the person has more rights than like some B-list singer.
It's like,
Okay, let me tell you my Tyrese story really quickly. All right, so I interviewed Tyrese, and he is a good singer, and he was very good in Baby Boy. Okay. I interviewed Tyrese for XXL. They had a column called Hip Hop Junkies where we would talk to non-rappers about hip hop.
Okay, I forgot that you wrote for XXL.
Oh, please. It's my claim to fame. Please. It's my claim to fame. It was my party trick.
Have you told your students that? Do they know that in your hip-hop class? They don't give a fuck who I am.
They care less. They don't even know what XXL is. They could care less. Okay, so we do the phone interview. This is long ago, pre-cell, or maybe there were cell phones, but I didn't have one. Landline. Obviously, my number pops up on his phone. We do the interview. He calls me back like 1 minute later to make sure I don't do this, or this. Then he calls. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, fine. Click. He calls me back again and starts haranguing me about you have to do this and and this has to happen. He called me, I think, 3 times. And it was getting to the point where I called up my editor and I was like, okay, get him away from me. Tell him to stop calling me. Has he never done an interview before? You don't call. And it wasn't like I was writing, Tyrese eats children. It was just like a Q&A. There was nothing I was going to take out of context, but he was driving me nuts and he was kind of being kind of flirty and then kind of menacing. And then I was like, get him off the phone. So whatever, Tyrese. And is he the only person who can pay Teddy Pendergrass? Really?
Listen, I feel like every time I hear his name,
he's
there's
a messy
some
girl.
Fuckery that comes trailing behind it.
Really. And can I say something? I don't know. I don't know if I'd want Lee Daniels directing that. I don't know.
The last person in the world that I'd want directing that is Lee Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you want to go with a black director. That's great. But I don't know if Lee Daniels is the guy because he brings too much stuff into it.
I mean,
give it to a new director.
Give it to somebody who'll make the movie that we all would actually want to see. How about that?
The movie we would all like to see is what went on in the car. Come on, Courtney. Allegedly.
I mean, that's the good part of the movie. That's where the story gets good.
We want to see the movie open with what allegedly went on the car, close with what allegedly, have a dance number about what went on. Come on, really? Do we need to have a movie about when he tells Harold Melvin, I'm not going to be in your group anymore? I mean, am I wrong?
I mean, and then went on to greater solo success. First of all, I have Teddy Pendergrass.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Let me just
that documentary. You ever see that Teddy Pendergrass documentary?
It's really good.
Fantastic. It's fantastic.
And you know what? I also forgot that he put out that many albums after the accident.
Out a lot. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Great.
It was like he really did. He really was great. And it's so interesting that none of these new guys sing like any of those older cats, man. They don't sing like a Luther.
Well, the only one who came even close, the only one who came even close, I guess. Well, some of the Chems and the Tanks kind of do that. But the only one who kind of came close in approximating kind of a sound of the past is Raphael Sadiq. And what's his face? Anthony Hamilton.
Fred and Tyrese went to.
I heard it was great.
They went to the show at Radio City over the weekend.
No, I was sick in bed. Wait, our guest Jim Farber is here.
Oh, Jim, Miguel said to tell you hi. I told him you were coming on the show, and he was like, "Oh my God, I love Jim." Tell him I said hey.
My bad. Forgive my voice. I'm getting over a little bit of a sore throat. So.
Oh, we all are. It's all the cool kids have it. A little croaky. All right, I'm going to introduce Jim Farber. All right. David Gonzalez, columnist for the New York Times, said, and I quote, Jim Farber is a national treasure. So I want you to, that's on your card from now on. Jim Farber is the Farmer. You could be Jim Farmer too if you want. Jim Farber is the former pop music critic for the New York Daily News. We all grew up. Well, no, I don't want to say we grew up. We're the same age. When I was a little girl, my mother used to read his reviews, and I'd go, "Oh, I want to be Jim Farber when I grow up." Great, and left the Daily News, and now writes really, really. I'm not bullshitting you, Jim. You're one of my favorite writers. I'm not just saying that because you're staring in front of me and bought me a meal one day. I'm telling you, and Courtney loves you as well. Writes great commentary and great features on all different types of music for all the outlets that only smart people read. So welcome, Jim Farber.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out I was like, why am I obsessed with Jim Farber? Yeah, and then I really realized I realized what it is.
He is.
It's like just growing up in New York, right? There were certain people that I read, and I feel like their voices resonated with me. And it seems like when I look at the people that I really followed and still follow, it's like everybody was gay, and I feel like that voice, when I would read what you wrote, it kind of like was the way I spoke to me and my friends spoke about like certain records and concerts. And I used to always look for what's he going to say about Madonna? What is he going to say about Madonna? Especially then, because I thought I was Madonna. You could not tell me I wasn't Madonna.
Yeah, it's scary. Well, for all we know, Madonna looks like Courtney right now.
It's actually what you say, Courtney, is really interesting to me because, especially for the period you're talking about, where I'm writing for the Daily News, of course I'm writing about all different kinds of music, because you just, as the critic, you cover everything. But it's interesting that I think only gay people recognize sort of the gay element in what I was writing. I don't think most straight people did, and certainly I know because I've talked to many people later and they said, oh, I never knew you were gay or anything. And I did write about it once in the paper, but I basically hardly ever wrote about that then. Basically because nobody wanted to know anything about gay people. That now everybody, people have asked me, friends have said, like, you never used to write about gay stuff. You write about it all the time now. And I said, it's just because the world changed. Now everybody wants to know, and then nobody wanted to know. So, but to get to the point, I do think that there were certain kind of bat signals being sent out, probably unconsciously by me, that some people, particularly gay people, were sort of picking up on.
I think we all have a certain frequency, you know what I mean? And it was just like, I was like, this is my language. It just seemed to fit and flow on in. And I was like,
oh, there you are. You disappeared for a while.
I did?
Yes. But yeah, we heard you. But wait, you heard you. As soon as you started saying you're gay, you went back in the closet and came back out again.
I guess.
Safe space.
Yeah, but I mean, I think a lot of people kind of associate me sort of with kind of classic rock, essentially, which is a very sort of, straight male image and identification. So I think that's why people... And I grew up with that music, and I do love it unapologetically. I think you're supposed to apologize for it now, but I'm not apologizing. I still think the music is great.
Well, by classic rock, I mean because the kids today refer to like Foo Fighters as classic rock.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah. They're
Manskin,
really
classic rock.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't know. So you're talking about the era of like the 70s, the bulge and the bulge and hair eras, I'm assuming.
I think so, yeah. And also remember that when you're a kid, if you're really interested in music, I think you tend to be most excited by the music that you just missed. So it's usually kind of the moment before. So yes, I'm coming up in the 70s, but a lot of the music that I really love was 60s psychedelia stuff, particularly experimental stuff. Even though I love punk, I also love long guitar solos and, God forbid, drum solos and everything. I always like every kind of music, I never was genre specific in any way.
I've seen you write, across the board. And of course, when you're doing a daily, you have to cover whoever's in town. Yeah. And I always used to think when we would run into each other occasionally, it's like, obviously we're at the quality shows that we're running into each other at the good shows. But I've seen you write beautiful, beautiful things about groups like Fairport Convention, who really never resonated in this country, so I will give you like your depth of knowledge about stuff, which I think is important for criticism and which I think is missing from criticism now, but something outside of your lane,
It's very weird, the criticism that we're seeing now. When I read certain pieces, listen, and this is okay, because you guys are both writers, so how do I say this without offending some of your colleagues and friends?
Oh, no, offend away.
Yeah, we love it.
No. Jim and I decided that we all hate the same people.
That's fine.
The thing, I feel like...
I don't have to worry about getting hired anymore. I'm in academia.
I feel like I read a lot of things, and it just doesn't seem like the knowledge base was there for the person who wrote the article about the person. It always seems very fluff. A lot of things seem fluff and surface. And
what is going on outside your house, by the way?
Literally, it is like hellscape on earth. I have no idea. Like, my bell is ringing, apartment surveys, the fucking someone has crashed into something. No, it just feels like when I read things now, there's a depth that I find that is missing. And sometimes the information has even been, I'm like, that's not correct. That's not correct. Like, if I know this, why don't you know this? That what you're saying is not correct. And it drives me insane. I'm like, what has happened to music journalism and really good long form
journalism
pieces?
or just journalism?
Just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I actually sort of disagree. I think I see good things out there, you know, if you look for them. I mean, I think that, and sometimes on Pitchfork, you know, they'll run really, really long pieces on fairly obscure stuff.
Well, I like Pitchfork, yeah.
Yeah, I one place I really like writing for is, you know, Tidal, the streaming service. They have a kind of magazine. It's just an online magazine, of course, but they have really quirky taste, and they go for all kinds of different things, you know.
And your stuff in The Guardian, some of it tends to be more.
I read your stuff in The Guardian. It's great.
Well, the great thing about writing for all British publications is that the population in general, they're just huge music fans, and there's fans of everything. You know, so they run an incredible number of music pieces, and they're interested in a lot of stuff that I know I couldn't sell in America. You know, even if it's about an American artist, actually.
Like what kind of stuff, for example?
I don't know. Well, I don't know who I could. I just did a big article for The Guardian about Moondog. You know.
Oh my God! Do you remember Moondog?
Yeah, I read the article. We posted it on our page. Yeah, it was.
That was a great article.
I think a lot of people didn't know. You know how many the jazz musicians loved him and classical musicians loved him and pop music people. I mean, you know, T-Rex wrote a song alluding to him. Janis Joplin covered a song on the first Big Brother record. So that's kind of a quirky thing that I was able to do a 2,000-word piece on. You know, so they'll run substantial pieces. But I think where I would agree with in terms of criticism today is, I mean, you just don't find much criticism.
That's my point. Yeah. It's like everything is glowing for everybody, and I don't.
Yeah. I think there's a genius.
There's a couple of
artists. Everyone's a genius. Every record is classic.
And there's a couple of artists who I feel like are just not interviewed or reviewed with a critical eye. They get a very glowing, everything is perfect. And I'm like, well
let's just call it out. I'll say it. You can't say anything negative about Beyonce. You can't.
Or Taylor Swift.
Or Taylor Swift at this point.
I feel like you'll be stoned and dragged out.
You used to be able to say negative things about Taylor Swift.
You could.
When she was when she was sort of apolitical in a way. I mean, you could say sort of negative thing when it wasn't quite sure where she was going. But now everything she does is the most, and I'm not saying this to be mean to her. She seems fine to me. And she has done good records, but Beyonce, you cannot say anything negative about her without, you know, Frankenstein Pitchfork coming out, and not the magazine Pitchfork. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't understand why certain people are critic proof.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, one is that obviously people don't want to invite the wrath, you know, of the beehive. They just think it's not worth it. And also the publications are, you know, playing more to what they perceive to be the audience. It's more kind of using the word populist is a loaded word, but it's sort of, you know, I mean, look, the way that I wrote in the Daily News for most of those years, I could never write that now. And I don't write that stuff now. I mean, I write stuff, I choose people who I really admire. And I write all about stuff I love, and it feels great to do that. But I just don't write about people I'm not particularly interested in. You know, but that's a luxury I have at this point. I mean, I can think of an example, one exception to that I can think of recently, but it wasn't a review. It was a feature about Greta Van Fleet, you know, who actually it is okay to dislike. And there have been a lot of negative reviews about them. But because
there's like Nickelback, 1975, Greta Van Fleet, mainly rock bands you can trash.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Greta Van Fleet, though, was so that was a feature for The Guardian that really was in part about the fact that they were getting so much criticism. And the guy, the lead singer, is a great interview. He's really funny, and he's very aware of this, and seems to not care. You know, I believe him, actually. I think he really is pretty grounded about what they do. But again, that was kind of almost writing about the criticism rather than voicing the criticism.
Right. Do you, I mean, that must be a function, again, of not having to, well, again, criticize a show. I mean, you're writing more, I don't want to say features.
Well, they are. I mean, there are features.
I wanted to ask you about the Bernie Taupin piece that you did. He's not somebody who gives a lot of interviews, I would imagine. Is that something you pitched, or did Vulture come to you?
No, I pretty much pitch everything, which I'm happy about, because those are the things I know I want to do, you know.
Right.
So with, you know, the reason that Bernie did do the interview, and would do a lot of interviews right now, is because he has a memoir out, you know, which is hilarious and absolutely fantastic. It's so funny. It's one of the best music memoirs I've ever read. It's not very linear. He kind of jumps all over the place. It's more done.
His lyrics are not very linear either.
Like a rock on tour, you know. But he's a very good rock on tour, and he's really, really terrific. So that turned out to be, I mean, a much longer piece than I knew it was going to be. That piece was, with the footnotes, was almost 10,000 words.
Wow.
You know, that was really kind of that, but that's a particular kind of piece that New York Magazine does that is called In Conversation. These very, very long Q&As. I
love those pieces, though, because those are the ones to me that you really get to dig in, and they're interesting, and you learn a lot of stuff. And I need more of that.
Well, also you have to get the subject to play along. You know, I mean, the thing was, within those conversation pieces, he had agreed going in. He had committed to a lot of stuff. So they flew me out there to interview him at his home. He lives north of Santa Barbara. So we talked for almost 3 hours there. And then he agreed to a follow-up interview by Zoom a week later. And I also sent him a bunch of email questions. And he answered everything. He was great. I mean, in fact, if you're a real fan, you know, in the interview, we've taken how, you know, Elton obviously gave his last show, and he said it's going to be his last show in July. And to answer the questions about, you know, people who always retire and then unretire, Bernie said he will never play his hits again, I can assure you of that. But he might do like a one-off show in New York or London where he's doing like a deep cuts kind of thing. So then I said, oh, what would you like to see in such a show? And I thought he would give me like 2 song titles or something, but like he sent me like 30 songs, you know?
Wow.
So we did a whole Spotify playlist, you know, of like Bernie's deep cut, you know, Dream Elton John concert. So yeah, you get to do stuff like that. That's really fun for fans, you know?
Do you,
you know what, Amy? Hold on. Let's take a commercial break right here.
Oh, we're going to take a break.
And we'll be right back. And we're back.
Oh. That was exhausting.
That was fast. It was a little faster than I thought.
I was telling a story I don't know whether men get it and I don't do interviews, men get abused the way that women often do in an interview subject. And maybe I was just dealing in a more abusive genre.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you were abused?
I mean, when someone's doing the interview and their hand is on their crotch the entire time, I find that abusive. Or, I'm sorry, I had an interview subject once, brand new heavies, where his hand was in his pants the whole time I was talking to him.
In front of you?
Yeah, I'm sitting right there. I'm like, I don't think.
And what was he doing?
He's just there. It was the brand new heavies. All right, let's put it this way, and I'll go back to the question. Interviewing the brand new heavies without India, a.k.a. Who Cares?
Oh. Yeah,
remember when they put out a record like, hi, we're going to have the one thing that makes us different, this woman who can actually sing? Oh, so his hand was in his pants, and he wasn't good looking. And who cares?
I can't say that I've ever had that happen.
Oh, well, Jim. And then Dr. Dre did the entire interview with his hand on his crotch. That was exciting. I mean, it's just...
See, that hasn't happened to me. And, you know, I'm not one to pass up a good opportunity. I would have been like, well, let me see it. You know,
the closest thing I can think to that...
I was a mother.
The closest thing I can think to that, and it's not at all close, actually, but it's just sort of... This was 1,000 years ago. I mean, it really must be like the beginning of the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s.
That is 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, and it was. It was a feature. It was one of Then the porn magazines were really big then, and they paid really well, and they had music articles. I mean, all magazines. It could be a women's magazine, a porn magazine. They all had music pieces. Everybody had music, arts and music pieces then. So this was a piece for, I forgot which porn magazine, with Ted Nugent. Which was kind of, but he was a great interview. And we didn't know yet back then, like, how insane he was. Like, it still seemed like a novelty at that point, because there really weren't any right-wing rock stars. So it seemed like just kind of a joke put on thing. We didn't know like it was for real. But anyway, so he was, and I did this interview in Huntsville, Alabama, of all places. We're flying around with him, and then when we did the interview after the show, he had his girl for the night, and so basically I went to the hotel room with them, and it was sort of the two of them were on the bed, and I'm sort of sitting on the bed, and we did the interview there, and then I left so they can do what they were going to do. But that was unusual. It was a good setting though for a porn magazine. So that was
it is a good setting, and people didn't realize what a lunatic. I mean, at that point, he was just like cat scratch fever, kind of crazy. He was on
clown.
He was a clown. He was on Four on the Floor when I was there, and I remember distinctly that Scott Polson, Brian, and I came very close to leaping over the table to choke the life out of him, because he was that bad. Well, it was one of those, I'm like a black man, I feel the noble beat of black, and we were just like, no, like you kill your own animal. Yeah, it was like the noble savage. It's like the Quentin Tarantino, I can use the N-word because my mother dated a black guy once, or the Bill Maher excuse. So are there people, this is such a, you've interviewed a zillion people, but who is somebody where you walked away with, said, this is a great person, and who have you just never wanted to interview again?
Oh, well, some of them that are really, really great. I got to do Joni Mitchell once, a long interview back in the 90s. That was pretty amazing. Because of the degree of presence, when she's there, she's there. She's not running through a speech or something. You can see how connected she is. I'd say the same thing with Bowie. I got to interview him a bunch of times. And I think people like that, they're very evolved emotionally, where they realize, this is my hour of my life.
But they're not articulate. Joni Mitchell's not articulate to be in Rolling Stone. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Jim.
Well, actually went a bit further. He also said, because he said, well, these people weren't, generationally. They didn't speak for their generations. It's like she wrote fucking Woodstock.
It was like,
it doesn't get
Joni
more
Mitchell?
Of your generation than that,
Yeah. The lady who's quoted by everybody. I was like, are you nuts? Are you on drugs, sir? You're on drugs.
Yeah, no, he is on drugs. I'm reading that biography right now, by the way. We'll get back to the question.
You're actually reading it?
No, Sticky Fingers, the biography.
But the thing with Joni is when she's speaking, she's writing. She's speaking in her writer's voice. She chooses words with care, seemingly effortlessly. And we spoke for a couple hours. That was fantastic. Yeah. Bowie's also really great. Elvis Costello was always good.
Oh, cool.
He's a great interview. He's voluble. He'll talk your ear off forever. I've had interviews with him where it's just to get a quote talking about somebody else, and he'll still talk for an hour. But also is really engaged. He's just a completely fascinating guy. Robert Plant, fantastic interview. And these are people also who they're great music critics. I would say that about Bowie, Robert Plant. Who else? People who, they don't just say, oh, I really like this artist because they're so great and they're a legend. They'll be very specifically take apart what they did that's different, why it's, what it sounds like. They speak like a really great critic.
And they always knew the references. You know what I mean?
Well, they're old.
They always knew the references.
They're old.
Yeah, but no, it's more than being old. It's about being able to dig into the parts and different musicians and artists. And there are a lot of people who are old who cannot dig through the references of different periods and understand what it was about.
You've interviewed the Pet Shop Boys before, right?
I have, yes. Yeah,
that was what I have to say. They're coming. He's a pop music critic, but they were a great interview. When
they're hilarious. Yeah,
they're hilarious.
Well, I had I've done him a bunch of times. In one interview, this would go back. I can date it. It was 1990. So they weren't out yet, believe it or not, right?
I have a story just like that.
Yeah, so this is great. So I'm doing the interview with them, and this is very obviously 3 gay men talking in this room. So we're talking the way we're talking, right? And so then at one point I said, well, I should kind of pull back here in my journalist hat and say, you don't talk about like, are you gay? Like this, just to see what they were going to say. And then Neil said, well, we don't answer the question. And then he went on to talk for, 20 minutes about why they're not out, which is basically, I thought like, this is the weirdest thing in the world.
Well, my thing with them is for one time I interviewed in person and they were staying at the Pierre. So hello, you're gay. And they trashed George Michael for like 20 minutes. And I wish I could remember what they just trashed him. But I did a bio for them. And this is when Brooklyn, I think I've told you the story, Corey. This is when Brooklyn first went to a 718 area code. So they didn't, they wouldn't know. And so before I did the bio, I think it was for the bilingual record. So maybe that was my first clue. And I said, not that it's going to be in the bio, but are they out? And the publicist says, well, I think they're out in Europe. And I went, all right, so news doesn't travel, obviously.
Yeah. Well,
so
back then it kind of didn't.
Yeah. So I'm doing the interview.
Thank God for that separation of the ocean.
Neil's great, and he gets on the phone, and he's lovely, and he goes, 718, where am I calling? And I said, it's Brooklyn. And he goes, oh, where Barbara's from. It's like, you, my friend, are gay.
That is upper epsilon of gay, too. If that was your first thought.
This may prompt your memory, actually, with George Michael. I think when they had the song, How Can You Expect to Be Taken Seriously? I think he was one of the targets of that. Because that was when he really wanted to be taken seriously, and which seemed such an absurd thing for very sophisticated people like the Pet Shop Boys. You don't say that. You don't say, I want to be taken seriously, especially if you want to be taken seriously.
Well, it's like when rappers, especially, we'll say, I'm a really humble person. It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you just said that, you're not.
Who's like one of the worst? I know this is horrible for writers to do it. I know it's horrible for writers.
I'm ready for the dark city to come on our Facebook page. There are great music journalists. I'm like, yes, there are. This is not a diss to the music journalists. But y'all need to weed out some of these people who are infiltrating the field.
Oh, I thought you were asking about which stars are bad.
No, stars. Yeah. I'm not going to make you talk trash about other journalists. She wants to. No, you won't get invited to the party.
I'm trying to anticipate the yelling I'm going to get, even from some of my friends who are writers. Like, you should. I'm not dissing you guys. I love writers.
No, I'm talking about interview subjects, like who.
And have you had any run-ins with Madonna?
Oh, yeah.
I've had good experiences with Madonna when I interviewed her, because I've written so much about. I mean, she knew, I've been writing about her forever. Yeah. But I hate to be fair because it's not in my nature. But sometimes when people, when it's not a good,
I gave you the guidelines for this show.
I know, so I'm screwing it all up. But the thing is, I do appreciate that sometimes they're doing a ton of interviews. You don't know whether they're just really tired. This is their 16th interview that day. You don't really know. I mean, I got off in the wrong. This is actually not a music person. Of all people, years and years ago, doing an interview with Keanu Reeves about I forgot which was. It was long time ago. This is when pretty early on in his career. But I did one right when he became famous with like Bill and Ted, and or it was Bill and Ted, I think, was just coming out, and then he was really fun. And, but then there was one when he was taking himself a bit more seriously. And I don't know, somehow he got off on the wrong foot, and it became difficult to get him back on track. He just thought I was an asshole. And I think I probably was. I probably asked some obnoxious questions,
I'm trying to think. I mean, there were people I always loved interviewing. Like, I always loved interviewing Paul Westerberg.
You didn't like your Kanye interview.
Well, nobody liked interviewing Kanye.
Well, I mean, it's notable.
Well, I didn't go into it.
I can tell you notable Kanye.
No, I didn't go into it not wanting it. He was just, that's who he, you know what I mean? It's like sitting down with Matt Gaetz. You're going to just get a lot of hostility. I mean, that's who he is. I always, I did have one or two situations where I'd run into my subjects on the street and they would kind of threaten me and I'd be like, oh. yes, I printed exactly. When you refer to the Jews at your label, I might want to print that.
Whoa. I interviewed Kanye when the first album was about to come out.
Me too. The first
album.
So
that was like, it was clearly a great album. He was clearly going to be a big deal, set up that way. And the interview went really well until at the end. Well, I didn't know really what he was like at that time. And he was being normal in that interview, and the record was great and all this. And then he says, and it was on the phone, so you don't get other signals, visual signals. So he says, if I don't like this, I'm going to come and beat you up, So I burst out laughing, and I said, "Oh, cool, that sounds like a fun thing to say." And then he said, "I'm not kidding," and I said, "Okay," but I still thought he was kidding, and apparently he liked the piece to come beat me up. But it was only later that I thought, I guess he did mean that. I just assumed he was kidding.
He wouldn't look at me when we did the interview. Uh-huh. He had his face. I interviewed him and the Beasties and Talib Kweli all for one story.
Okay.
So it was exhausting. And Kanye was like, the prize. He was the jewel on the crown, because I think the first album was about to come out or just come out, and he was the big thing. And he was angry. I've told Courtney, he was immediately angry because I told him I liked the record, and he said to me, "Did you buy it?" And I went, "No, they send us the records. Nobody buys them." And he got mad that I had not bought the record. So it went downhill from there.
That's very weird.
Well, he's very weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very weird.
I'm the first one to say that. He's very weird.
I mean, I always would go, because I had a kind of, you're a girl, you're white, like blah, blah, blah. But he's just, he's a strange, enchanted child. And we have seen over the years reasons for that. Have you ever had the artist ask to look at the article ahead of time?
Yeah, I've had things like that, I recently had something like that, but I can't talk about it. It's a little bit of a touchy subject. But I did tell them it's against the policy of the publication, and we just can't do it. So
Courtney, get you Madonna questions. Courtney's dying.
Oh, okay.
Good Madonna questions. He's like,
no, it's not even about that. I just want
to talk about clubs.
Oh, right, clubs.
No,
sorry, I lied. It was
the thing about me reading your art, like the 80s, the 90s into New York. I feel like I was in a lot of these places. I was like, oh, I go there. I've been there. I recognize it. I'm not really a nostalgic person. I'm really, really not. But I will say that energy of going out in New York at that time, the 80s into the 90s, I would say even the very early, super early aughts, it's just can never be replicated of what the energy of New York City was. It's like you went out, you heard great music, you danced. It wasn't about standing on a line to then be forced to buy a table and have a really small dance floor and a shitty sound system. And when I think about it now, even like gay life now, when I go out and I see these kids, they seem to be having an okay time, but it just feels different, a little more sanitized from what we used to have in this city.
Well, I think in terms of what seems sanitized is probably just the public face of it. Because as you know, I mean, everyone's meeting up on their phones. So they're doing all the unsanitary stuff out of sight, basically. Right. Because, if you're talking about gay bars, I mean, gay bars don't have the function of gay bars anymore. They
really don't. It's weird.
They're just about, they can be gay meeting places. And also, actually, this was an article that I did about 4 or 5 years ago for the New York Times style section about, I think the headline was, how gay should a gay bar be? And it was all about straight women taking over gay bars, particularly in LA, to basically get away from, they didn't want to be hit on by straight guys. So they're running around to all these, to the gay bars. I mean, a perfect example of the one that's really become overrun is the big one in West Hollywood.
The Abbey.
The Abbey, right? Yeah. So the best thing that I found for the story, this is like as a journalist, those things like when you find this out, it's like, this is so great, I can't believe it. Like I could have made it up, but it's real. But I'm interviewing the guy who owns the place. And he said, well, actually, I've just opened a new place called the Chapel within the Abbey to be a gay bar. So they had to open a gay bar within the gay bar to get away from all the straight women coming.
It's crazy.
So I thought that's how crazy it got, But in terms of, for me, clubs, because I'm older than you are, Courtney. So for me, there was so many things in the 70s where I think people don't realize how small the scene was and how kind of easy it was to really feel part of it. One thing that I think people don't get, everyone knows CBGBs, they know to say that, but they don't realize, how few people went, and the most amazing thing was during the height of the punk thing, in the mid 70s there, when it's, Talking Heads and Blondie and Ramones kind of breaking out and coming out of there in television, those, all the critics love that stuff. So they wrote about it constantly. It's written about in Time Magazine, in People Magazine, the New York Times, all over the place. And those articles would come out. And the next week, I can tell you, the next weekend, it's the same 200 people there. Right. Like nobody was inspired to go to those clubs. Except
and half of them were members of bands.
Yeah, it was half of them were members of bands. Yeah, it was really such a small scene. But actually the club that I wanted to plug, only because it doesn't get enough attention, that I think was really important, was starting in, it opened in 76, but starting in 78, Hurrah began to have bands play. And this was in 78, rock fans were not dancing and punk fans were not dancing. So the idea was this was going to be, they called it rock disco at the time. That was the trend they were trying. But Hurrah was the club, was a building that's since been torn down.
Where was it?
Just right near Lincoln Center on 62nd Street. And Broadway, and it was
that was Ruth Polsky, right?
Ruth Polsky, she did well. Farrat was kind of managing the place, Jim Farrat, but Ruth Polsky was really important because she brought over all these British acts to come to Hurrah. That was their first New York show. So because of the late Ruth, I got to see The Cure's first show in America, which was at Hurrah. XTC's first show there, Gang of Four magazine, that whole tier of people, they all played at Hurrah. It started with, they had to have a Tom Ian play starring Divine, the Neon Woman, was playing in 1978 on the weekdays. And then on Mondays, they were going to have bands. So the very first rock band they got was actually Nona Hendrix's solo group right after the Bell broke up. So that was the first one. And the second week was the Ramones. And then it went from there, and they played rock, whatever rock music you could dance to, which wasn't that much then. It was all you dance to Devo and the Cars and the Ramones. I Want to Be Sedated.
Like the new when they started calling it new wave kind of.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you would basically dance to that. But that was a wonderful scene and was really different at that time. And
it was like that. And it was very short lived because she was killed. Ruth, right.
What happened?
She got hit by a car?
She got hit by a car. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was a random accident, horrifying.
Yeah, no, it was, but it was, I saw Bush Tetras there. I was living in California at that time, but I came back and that's where you would see like Medium and all those kind of Blurt. I saw, how about, did you ever go to Mercer Art Center?
No, that's before. I hardly ever get to say I'm too young for anything anymore. But actually, the Mercer Art Center was just before me. So no, I did not.
That was like Tramps. Remember Tramps? I used to go see a lot of people with Tramps.
Sure, of course. Yeah, well, Tramps had a number of different incarnations, but it was really good, I think, when Steve Weitzman was booking it. And he got all kinds of artists from all over the world. I saw, a lot of, I remember seeing a very early Radiohead show there. I think that was probably their first thing in New York.
Wow. I saw D'Angelo there, one of his first shows.
I feel like I saw Shaka Khan there.
I saw
it. Yeah. That's going to move to a slightly bigger space.
Did you ever go to Tier 3 at all? Because that was
I was going to mention Tier 3. Yeah, Tier 3 was great. They had the beginnings of what was of the no wave stuff. So it was DNA, and I love noise and abrasions, so I really like that kind of aggressive.
You are a New Yorker.
I always say like Yoko is my favorite Beatle. It's like I like.
Okay, here's the
thing. Really.
All of my friends make fun of me because I fucking love Yoko Ono. I have
we make fun of you for other reasons.
No, but I will play a Yoko album seriously and be like in here just grooving along, and they're like, I like the
early screaming.
Me too. I like the early. Yeah, the early screaming is really, really good,
But they also, I love Lydia Lunch's group, Eight-Eyed Spy, who played there, and they're an absolutely fantastic group. I love that. She said she broke them up because they were too popular, meaning like 14 people played. So when I said that to her, she said, my ideal audience would be one, because then I know it'll be the right one.
Right.
That's commitment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think financially also, I mean, it's going, how can you have clubs in New York anymore. I mean, it's just, Giuliani killed a lot of that with the cabaret law stuff. And it's like, who can afford to do anything? I mean, honestly.
I mean, on a smaller scale, there are a lot of venues I like, I mean, I like all the venues that are out in Brooklyn. I like going, there's a whole bunch of them out there.
No, there actually are great venues, and they've built new great ones. It makes me sad that there's not one of the original smaller rooms left. They've all kind of been pushed out. But Brooklyn has great spots to go see shows, which is why everybody plays there. And all of the clubs have opened in Brooklyn. All of the international DJs come to New York from all around the world, but no one plays in Manhattan anymore. And a lot of tours, smaller acts play in Brooklyn.
What's that really great space that's out in Bushwick?
Elsewhere?
It's a really big space.
Knockout Center?
The Knockout Center that's a lovely space, but that's kind of, it's far from any transportation.
Yeah, that's kind of like Queens. Yeah.
Is it called Elsewhere or Brooklyn Steel? Elsewhere.
No,
there's Brooklyn Mirage. There's
I'm trying to think. It might be Brooklyn Mirage. It's like some of it's outdoor, some of it's indoor.
Brooklyn Mirage.
That's a really great space. I saw a show. I saw Kim Petras play there a while ago. It was really fun.
Courtney, where did we see Nana?
Tour. We saw. Oh, what was it?
National Sawdust.
Oh yeah, National Sawdust.
That's what it was. Which was a great room. It's a small room, but that's a great room, and that was a great room.
The sound was good. The sound was really good.
I saw her there, and I saw her when the old Highline Ballroom, which I used to love that.
Oh yeah.
I love the Highline.
I live like 2 blocks from there, so
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I love that.
That was a really great space. And I don't know what they're doing with that space now. I don't know what's there.
Right. Another way, like, there was a great place to see a show. It's like I used to love the Ritz, right? Now, and I know it's still there as Webster Hall, but for some reason, when I go there now, I don't have the same affinity for it.
I was a big Irving Plaza fan, too.
I like
but that was, I saw
at least that's still there. It's still,
It's still there. They still do shows there.
Well, they fancied it up. If you've seen it, like it's now, it's all fancy now, which it absolutely was not before.
No, not at all. It was like a Ukrainian mob hall or something.
It was
it was. This is not alleged, Courtney. This is real.
No, it was.
It was a Ukrainian mob hall?
Yeah, well, it was a Ukrainian, all that area was Ukrainian catering halls, but there was something always a little kind of something going on at Irving Plaza, which you couldn't quite put your face. The guy that ran the place, because I was like a little punk rock girl, and there was something up. I mean, there was nothing illegal, but there was something not legal at the same time. You know what I mean? Like
shady New York.
That
Shady
kind
New
of
York in a fun way. But shady New York now is just shady for rich people, right? And everybody else is fucked. Old school shady New York was at least fun for everybody.
I still defer.
There was a little bit of shade for all.
And then, in terms of shady, the first gay bar that I went to that I really loved when I was a late teenager was the Ninth Circle. And that was still, which is on 10th Street in the Village, and that was mob run still at that time, and most of the gay bars were still in 70s.
So were the strip clubs, because I worked at the Baby Doll, and that was
all
mob
of them
run
down
too.
There, all mob run.
The mob.
Well, the thing that a lot of people miss with the mob in certain clubs and also in the record industry. I'm sure you've talked to people about this from dating from that era where they said, the fact that you made the payoff and you got what you paid for, you knew basically what you were going to get.
Things were efficient.
Listen,
they didn't screw you. They actually, if you paid, they didn't screw you.
Listen, it was cheap drinks and lots of dicks. There was nothing better.
Except at a strip club, nothing better. They were completely. If they said they were the performers got paid, the bartenders got paid because they wanted to not,
Now I'm thinking of some exceptions. If you ask Van Morrison about this and Bang Records, you will get a different story. Because with that was mob run where I think he felt that he had to flee for his life,
Oh, well, he probably had it coming.
A little flee for your life is not bad as long as you have the coin to immediately realize. Just don't be dumb that people always think my favorite is the criminals who do things in New York and then they're like, I'm going on the run to my cousin's house. And it's always South Carolina, Georgia, or Florida. I'm
with
like,
phone, with a GPS.
They're coming to South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So I'm going to need you to flee for real someplace else.
Jim, what are you listening to these days? Like, what do you it doesn't even have to be brand new kind of stuff, but we talked about the new Stone single, which shockingly, I was like, wow, it's really good.
I started to listen to the Full Stones album yet, but I haven't listened to it enough to get any kind of real judgment on it yet. But we'll see. I mean, the bar is high. It's hard for them to, when you have a catalog like that. You talk to older artists, they'll always tell you, you're competing with your back catalog.
Right.
It's hard.
You know how you can tell when something is like, it's just okay? When somebody's like, well, I was listening to it. I haven't really gotten through it. And they're not like, what I've heard so far is great. I need to go back to it.
Well, no, sometimes you're just in the wrong mood, or you just, you want to kind of give it a chance. Sometimes it takes a while to. I mean, I'm always discovering stuff that was always there, that I wasn't aware of. Like I happen to have, you mentioned Fairport Convention before. I have a particular love of British folk music, or from all over Ireland as well, and Scotland and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of the really obscure people, particularly from that time in the 60s and all this sort of stuff. But there's this guy who I didn't really know about, who I'm just finding out more, who dates from that era. A guy named acoustic guitarist named Michael Chapman. And he's very much in the mode of like the great Pantheon guys of Bert Jansch and John Renbourn and John Martin. He's just an unbelievably skilled guitarist. He's put out like 60 records, So I'm starting in 1969 listening to his stuff now. This is the great thing about these streaming services. It's all out there. You can listen to it.
It's all right there.
This guy's, he died a couple of years ago at 80, but I'm still discovering his stuff, So
it's funny you say John Martin, because when oh my God, I'm totally blanking on his name. The kid that works with Rock's Back Pages was staying at my house for a minute because he was in town. And I said, yeah, you crash here. He was talking about John Martin. And I went, oh yeah, I've never heard John Martin. And you would have thought I said I'd never heard the Beatles. Yeah. I know, but it was like, in my defense, yeah.
Well, to be honest, I mean, no one would say that in America. I mean, because he's British. I mean, British people would expect that maybe you might know John Martin, but Americans don't know who the hell he is.
No, I mean, I had no idea.
I like discovering horrible people, then realizing that they have years and years and years of catalog. When I discovered Mylène Farmer, I thought I'd discover some new French lady. And so I called Miguel and I was like, I discovered this French lady on this new record. It's really poppy. I really like it. And when I was like, it's Mylène Farmer, he was like, bitch, no.
Yeah, I know.
He was like,
even I knew who Mylène Farmer was.
Listen, he said, whenever I go to a seedy, if I go to with my friends and we go to some seedy gay bar in France, they're always playing Mylène Farmer and her videos. It's like, she's been around since the 80s. So then I started digging into the catalog and I was like, oh my God, I love this. It's terrible. It's great. And that's the kind of shit I like to discover. Things that bring me pleasure. People who have a high production value with like questionable vocals and lots of videos and things. That's my jam,
Is there anything coming out that any big, they don't have like quarters anymore, like, the second
they still have quarters.
Records.
No, it's still in quarters.
But is there anything that you're looking forward to that's going to be coming out at a theater near you? Certainly. I mean, a record store near you.
A record store. I mean, it's so funny. I will bring up this. I'm stalling here, obviously, for an answer, but I'll bring up a broader issue.
And doing an excellent job.
Well, if you, I used to always love looking at what's it called? What's the website that would show you all the albums coming out?
I know exactly, and I can't think of it. But yeah,
it's a really great site. I'll think of the name in a minute. And they would show you like 6-8 months out. It was great. Of course.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And now you go to it, and you're lucky to get a month ahead. Like the record companies don't announce stuff the way they used to. They used to announce records way ahead.
Because everything is people drop. Sometimes
they drop it really fast.
They just drop it really fast.
Or it'll be a couple weeks. It'll be like
they'll drop it and not have a physical release yet because they can just drop it on all the DSPs and put it on all of the download sites and be like, a CD is coming in a month. Vinyl will be here in a month.
Sure. I can't believe I can't remember the name of that website. It's a really good website. It's still useful.
I don't remember it either.
I used to use it too because when you wanted to pitch things to outlets, you'd go, well, in 6 months there's going to be a new Yakety Yak record.
Right. And it also has like music documentaries and memoirs, because everyone's writing their memoir now. So you can see a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff to pitch stories.
So how do you pick now these days, Jim, what you want to pitch and talk about? Is it just kind of like, is something being assigned, or are you like in a frame of mind, I've been thinking about this artist. Let me go around and see who would want to get a piece.
Well, a lot of the stuff winds up getting, the easy things is like if people have a memoir, that'll probably be announced a few months ahead of time. And that means you'll have time to read this, 500-page thing because it can be time consuming. Or I write a lot about documentaries, music documentaries that are coming out. Those are always rich. There's a really interesting one that's going to open this week about Joan Baez.
I've seen the interviews and stuff.
It's
and I
interesting.
read Amanda's piece about it in the New Yorker.
Yeah.
I thought it was really, really, I saw her on, not 60, what's the show that's on
CBS
Sunday
This Morning?
Yeah, it was a really great interview.
Well, Joan is a fantastic interview. I mean, she's really interesting. But when I first heard about this documentary, I thought, well, there was already this American Masters on her a few years ago that was great.
It was really good.
So I thought, what else is this going to be? But that was really on her career. This is almost all on her personal life. It's about her retiring, and all her feelings about that, and her kind of trying to process the fact that she's not going to sing live anymore, and not really sing much of anything.
And also her voice has she's an alto now, which is really
well. I like the way her voice has aged.
I like it a lot. Yeah,
that doesn't bother me, but it bothers a lot of people. There's this singer, speaking of British folk, this singer Shirley Collins, who's known there but isn't known here at all. Yeah. And I wrote a piece about her for the Times about a couple of years ago when she had a comeback. It was her first album in like 42 years. She's like 80 now, but she had dysphonia, which is a psychological disorder, where she lost her voice. She didn't sing for years. But now that she's coming back as a seriously older person, her voice is completely different. It's an amazing instrument, but it doesn't sound anything like it did before. But it has.
That's what Daryl McDaniels had. That's what DMC had. He had that same thing, which is why his vocal, his delivery, and I was going to say Marianne Faithfull, but I think there's other things going on with that. With her,
Linda Thompson had this also.
But it could have been brought on that same condition because Marianne's voice changed drastically from that sort of soprano, airy songbird to very like a completely.
I think there may have been other factors. I used to be a soprano.
But I think that. But Marianne's a good example of somebody who. With her voice changing, I mean, it got way better. I mean, there's so much better.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah.
If you listen to her very early recordings, I mean, there's not really that much there that's very interesting. But when she came back, with broken English and everything after that, she just got more and more interesting,
Court, what are you listening to these days other than me, Lynn Farmer?
Well, no, it's really funny. I've kind of moved past that moment with me, Lynn. One day I was playing... I was playing one of her records, and I was like,
"This is too awful, even for me." It's like me with reality television. I get a point. I'm like, these people are too stupid, even for me.
I'm completely a homosexual this week because I have just been playing Kylie Minogue. You know how much I love Kylie Minogue. So the fact that Kylie put out a new album made me start digging into all of my Kylie catalog. So I've been this whole weekend and last week I've been digging into some of my favorite records, the Impossible Princess record, her 1996 self-titled album, the Deconstruction albums. I've been listening to the new Corinne Bailey Rae. I like that a lot.
Oh yeah, I do like.
And the new Georgia Smith. I really like
Georgia Smith a lot.
So I've been listening to that all weekend. And Ezra Collective.
There is actually a singer that's really the most beautiful voice I've heard in a long time. A Canadian singer. The name is Jeremy Drucker, but the person it's Canadian Indigenous, so it's not Indigenous American because it's Canadian. They call them First Peoples, right?
First Nation.
First Nation, yeah, okay.
First Nation, yeah.
But this person, the reason I keep on using that pronoun, identifies as a Two-Spirit person, which is something that would way predate any notion of non-binary stuff. I mean,
absolutely.
If you remember, actually, the movie back in 1970, the movie Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman, there's a Two-Spirit character in there, which I remember actually as a kid. But anyway, Jeremy's voice it's really, really exquisite. It has the timbre and some of the vibrato is a lot like Nina Simone. So you'll definitely think of Nina Simone. You definitely think of the person whose name was Anthony. What's the name now?
Anoni.
Right. So that's also a similar voice. A little bit of Brian Ferry in there also, because they all have that kind of flavor.
You get her attention.
Wait a minute, Brian Ferry before he lost it. Wait a minute, Brian Ferry before he lost his voice.
This is a young person, so he's got a great voice.
You know that Yeah.
And the Charlotte Cardin record, I'm still listening to that, 99 Nights. She's Canadian, and I really like this record. I like it a lot.
I'm still trying to decide if this remastered Tim is good or bad. I can't figure it out.
I love it. But I love the album.
The remastered one. Yeah. I love the replacement. So
what do you think about remasters, Jim? Do you like when people go in and remaster these albums and try to change them up, clean them up?
It depends. I mean, I'll tell you one example that really blew me away. This is from a few years ago. The whatever the latest fiddling with Bitches Brew with the Miles Davis album. I mean, this is an album I've been listening to for 50 years, And when I heard that remix, it was like, holy fucking shit. This changes the whole relationship of the musicians. It was it's so beautiful. There was a clarity, and it really made me hear the songs in a different way, or the pieces, in a different way. That one blew me away. I don't know who did that remaster, but whoever did it, it's amazing.
It was Legacy. It didn't come out. It wasn't a song.
It's through Legacy.
Because there's always somebody with the Miles. There's definitely always somebody who's overseeing and doing that whole. Yeah.
Well, originally, because all those recordings were sort of put together. They were all from various things, and then the producer kind of made them into what they became. What they put the semi-formal tracks. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You were saying, Jim, I was going to...
No, I was just saying it's a case-by-case basis. That's a boring answer. But some of them are great. Some of them are... I don't even notice the difference.
Thank you, legendary Jim Farber, for coming on our messy little show.
National treasure, Jim Farber. And he said that unprovoked, Jim.
My homosexual hero. I was like, I know, I'm reading these words. I could be saying this. I was who is this man? Who is he?
That's great.
I know the Farb.
When she told me she knew you, I was like, Jim Farber, who I've been reading for decades. What do you mean you know Jim Farber? She was
there was a point in my life where I had a viable career, Courtney.
I'm like, he's a New York legend.
At one point, Jim could say, I know Amy Linden. Okay, let's be fair.
That is very true.
Let us be fair.
Yeah.
But he's Jim Farber, and I'm just somebody who's trying to convince kids that I know something about hip hop. Anyway, and how to write a sentence. Courtney, please take us out. Oh, Jim, what's the next piece we can look forward to seeing you having written in?
What should appear soon is another piece in The Guardian about Tony Visconti, the great producer who did all of the, so many of the great Bowie records and all of the T-Rex records and a million other things. I mean, an interesting thing he did back then was, back in the early 70s, he produced a group you may or may not remember called Osabisa. They were based in England, but they were I guess their parentage, I think, was from Ghana. But that became the first, in 1971 and 2, 3, the first African act that had a real career, a sustained album career in the UK and the US. Those albums actually charted well. He produced those things. But anyway, he has a box set called Produced by Tony Visconti. And it's, a 4 CD, 77 track. But he's produced thousands and thousands of tracks. So, and we got to do the interview. It's the most convenient interview I've ever done in my building because he lives in my building.
Work.
That was the shortest commute ever to an interview.
It's very like I'm going down to 2C. I'll be right back.
You can't expense anybody for travel.
No. So that's going to be in The Guardian, I guess.
We will find it.
I love The Guardian music pieces. I have to say,
I love writing for them.
The Guardian music pieces are great. And with that, thank you for coming on, Jim. You know what is, people.
Thank you for having me.
You hear us every week on the Pantheon Podcast Network. We're here. You're there. We'll be here next week. We'll see you next week. Bye.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package, with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's FantasyPoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. FantasyPoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.